QI phase one of this new season. I'm not going to record every phase that I do throughout the season, but I do want to record the first one just to go over some strategy adjustments that I've been thinking about. I know the farm at opening is a popular concept. I dismantled that in the 3.5 phase of my previous series. I have enough resources to do that. The farm is just not cost effective. Just to recap the math on that, we're going to spend 200 coin and 50 supplies. If you rush the farm, you'll get 77 supplies on the upcoming collection, so you'll profit 17,000 supplies. But it's going to take a while to recuperate the coin that you invested. You could also plant 2 butchers for 5,000 coin and get 18 supplies on the upcoming collection, and you don't have to rush them. So butcher is better than farm at opening. This would be 4x6 space. This would be 4x5 space. So the farm at opening just is not practical. I understand that on the second and third collection, the supply production is gonna ramp up pretty quickly. I get that, but it's a waste of resources at the opening when you're limited to just what you start with. Like, your city isn't actually reproducing those resources yet. So arch first, and again, the purpose of the arch is to effectively create extra expansions, right? So let's go ahead and get that arch down. And having the arch planted now frees up the 4 squares that we would be wasting on amphitheater to manipulate happiness every single round. Arch is planted. Don't even need to rush it. It'll cook in time for our next collection. It'll actually cook 5 minutes earlier than everything else. Let's go ahead and get our expansions. I like the right side, and I'm going to use a goods building that I don't normally produce. Don't have any more goods to get that, so I'm going to use shards for this. Shards for this. In my previous series, I spent more shards on rushing stuff than I normally would have, instead of like buying actions or the initial city settlement, but I did end up buying the 200 shard expansion as well at some point in the season. So let's just get that done. In my first series, I planted a goods building after the first collection and piggybacked off one of my resources to get this 4th expansion. We're going to do the same thing this season, but just for expansion number 5. So far I've spent 460 shards, and my seasonal budget is 500. So I am going to stick to that this season. I rushed some stuff in the previous series, like I said, that I normally wouldn't, but I am going to stick to that this season. Looking back, I think two big mistakes that I made in my first series, and proof's in the pudding. Like, you guys watched me battle blue and red on level 11, so, and was effective. Like, I was using up all of my actions. So proof's in the pudding. My system does work, but here's some adjustments that I'm going to make going forward. My original strategy was to just snowball resource production every single collection. So use resources, buy another space, plant more productions. So we're scaling up the production from 50,000 of each resource to 100,000 the next collection to 150 the next collection. And the end game is that once we reach higher levels, like level 10, 11, if you're unable to fight, you can still donate resources. That was always my strategy. But this new system doesn't have a donation node on those higher levels, which I didn't realize when I started this series. So we got to adjust to that. I don't think the resource production is as important as attack, building up your attack throughout the phases. So I wait until the last few days to start planting towers because they consume happiness. The aqueduct is more efficient on happiness, takes longer to build, but I think if we start building aqueducts here and there throughout the these phases, if we do have extra happiness, and just letting them cook, we won't have to scramble at level 11 in order to be able to fight. Problem number 2, I think, is the tailor. And this kind of ties into the farm issue. Tailor costs 6k coin and 25k supplies, and the purpose of planting it is to increase your supply production, right? But it only generates 19,000 on your first collection. So you don't even break even on the tailor until your second collection. It's not as brutal on the coin investment as a farm, but the logic with a farm is that you invest coin in order to increase your supply production, right? And the farm is efficient at that. But the tailor, I think, is actually a wasted step. I kind of realized that afterwards in the season. Like I said, you don't even break even until the second collection, but even then, you're only producing 19,000 per production cycle, versus the farm. So I'm actually gonna skip tailors almost entirely. I might have one or two here and there, but I'm basically just gonna go from butcher straight to farm, and that's gonna be a gradual process, right? Like one farm every 2 days or something. It's not gonna happen overnight, but just skip the tailor step completely. The difference with cottage by comparison, costs the same resources, 6k coin, 25k supply, but increases your coin production. So it costs 6k coin, but gives 19,000 or whatever it is on the first collection. That's the difference on the cottage versus the tailor. The tailor doesn't break even on supplies until the second collection, and the purpose of planting it in the first place is to increase your supplies, right? The purpose of planting a cottage is to increase your coin production, and you make 13,000 profit on your first collection. So the cottage is actually accomplishes what it's supposed to do. The tailor, I think, is a waste of supplies. Along the same lines, I think planting the cottage early on will eliminate some of the need for extra space that I had in the first series, where I was using those extra expansions to plant more tile houses. That strategy worked really well in the old system, where there were donation nodes on the higher levels, and a lot of those donation nodes weren't even optional. So like there would be pinch points in the map where you have to donate coins or goods in order to keep going. So in the old system, if you built your entire city based on stockpiling as many troops as you could and building up all your aqueducts, you wouldn't even be able to participate in those nodes. So the resource thing made sense in the old system. But in the new system, where those are optional in the lower levels and they don't even happen in the higher levels, the extra tile houses and the extra expansions, I think, is not really the best strategy. So I'm probably gonna stop at 9 or 10 expansions this season. I had 12 at the end of last season. I'm probably gonna stop at 9 or 10 and reuse the resources that I was spending on goods. I'm gonna reuse those to arches and aqueducts within a smaller city grid, if that makes sense. More expensive buildings on a smaller grid. On a side note, I forgot to mention this, but I did start in the map before I actually built my city, just to see what I collected from the map. So I got an extra 10,000 coin and an extra 10,000 supplies just from the map. So make sure you do that every season, just so you actually have a more accurate budget to work with for what you're planning. So all that said, no farm at opening. I had the ability to do it, but I think it's a blunder. No farm at opening. We're just going to go with butchers. The cottage, I do think, is justified. So we are going to plant a couple cottages at least on opening, and then the rest is just tile houses and butchers. So let me get it set up, and I'll be right back with the first layout. Alright guys, initial setup is done. Town hall placement for starters. I usually shift up 4 on opening day, and then over 1 on the second day. And the over 1 serves 2 purposes. It gives us a 3 wide space over here, which I was using for tailors before, but in my new strategy, this will be arches. The other advantage is that it gives us 6 wide over here, which is a really good spot for housing. Um, Main difference though is the vertical spacing. I was going up 4 in my previous setup, with the anticipation of planting tailors on top and bottom. So you'd have 4 behind the town hall, perfect height for tailors, and 6 in front of the town hall, which is perfect for a pair of house and tailor. New system, I'm gonna rethink that and start with 3 spacing on opening day for butchers. We have the resources for 2 tailors actually. No tailors planted. I'm gonna skip that step completely and just do butcher straight to farm. So the vertical spacing that I'm using now, we'll shift it up to eventually. So we'll have a space of 5 in the back for butcher and tile house, and then eventually farm. And then we'll have a space of 5 in the front for the same pattern. In this first iteration though, this spacing of 7 in the front will be 2 tile houses plus a butcher, and then as soon as possible the farm. So I think that was another mistake that I made in last season, snowballing resources like I said, and just kind of increasing coin on one collection, then increasing supplies on the next. So I waited too long to plant the farm. I definitely think it's a blunder to plant on the first day, but I think it should be planted by probably the second day at least, so third collection-ish. So I think I waited too long on that. I don't think you should do it right away, but pretty soon. So that's what this bottom group will be set up for. Let's do the math real quick on what we're going to get on the upcoming collection. I have 8 tile houses planted, 2 cottages, and then 10 farms. So 10 butchers, sorry. So 94,000 supplies. On the housing, we'll have 600 housing population, so we'll have a 1,200 population demand. The arch is going to give us 675, so we are going to have to delete tile houses as we go. I'm going to assume that I collect coin at 100% happiness. So some of those are going to be collected at 80%, some of them are going to be collected at euphoric, but let's just go with the 100% for an average. That should give us 88,000 coin. I saved enough resources from this initial setup that we'll have roughly 140,000 of each resource after the next collection. So I'll do the same thing I did in the first series, plant and rush a goods building for expansion number 5. I'm looking at this one down here for my 5th expansion. And then I think I did it the same way in the first series. I planted arch number 2 on the first collection. So that way we're done manipulating happiness. That'll consume most of our collection, might have enough left over for a cottage. But once we get the second arch in place, our coin collection will be closer to around 120,000 once we have the second arch in place, just so we don't have to delete tile houses as we go. So that should get us to a farm pretty quick within the second or third collection. And then from there, just upgrade tile houses to cottage. But like I said, I'm going to avoid the tailor step basically completely if possible. I might end up with 1 or 2, but I'm going to try and avoid that entirely if I can. So overall, pretty similar strategy to my first series. I'm not going to record every phase going forward, like I said, but this is the adjustment to my strategy that I'm going to make this season. The main thing is just skip the tailors and then start building aqueducts earlier on instead of an excessive amount of expansions, because towards the end game the resources aren't as valuable as they were in the old system. So you don't really need to scale your resource production up to that point. Better to emphasize the attack a few cycles earlier. Overall, basically the same strategy though. I am gonna get at least a few more expansions, so increase production with extra space. Ultimately, that's the purpose of the arch, right? It's not an expansion, but it frees up 4 grid squares worth of amphitheater. Second part of the strategy is just to plant a ton of cheap buildings early on. I still have the resources to plant 2 more Taylors. It's just not not my priority. Plant the cheap stuff early on, and then upgrade it intentionally as you go through these phases. Make sense? I will keep you guys posted periodically, but quick videos, and like I said, I'm not gonna record the whole every single walk step by step. All right, talk to you soon. Bye.